further ado, President, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon to everyone here. Indeed, on Tuesday, we will mark 100 days since the College of Commissioners took office. 100 days, 1st of December, that feel like a lifetime ago. In between, the world around us is changing at lightning speed. Geopolitical shifts are shaking alliances. Decade-old certainties are crumbling, and we still have a brutal war raging at our borders. Now, despite these turbulent times, this Commission has hit the ground running. From day one, we stayed the course that we had laid out in the political guidelines, building always on the three pillars you're very familiar with. It's prosperity, security, democracy. 100 days into our mandate, we stand by the European choices in the political guidelines, and we doubled down on them. We appointed the first ever Commissioner for Defence, a move that now, 3 months in, feels not just necessary but the right thing at the right time, because we have clearly entered a new era of harsh geostrategic competition. We see that some shut themselves off, sow uncertainties, and strive for short-term gains. I want to be very clear that Europe stays open with partnership and outreach, and we offer what is very important, predictability and stability, valuable features this time. From day one, we engaged in building new partnership and strengthening old ones with countries and regions big and small. As you are aware, we forged landmark agreements with Switzerland, with Mexico, with Mercosur. With Mercosur, we achieved a major breakthrough in the negotiations that lasted more than 2 decades, and we created a market for consumers of 700 million people while protecting vulnerable sectors. We reignited trade talks with Malaysia. We re-engaged with the CARICOM countries. And in India, the world's largest democracy, which I visited last week with the College of Commissioners, we deepened cooperation on trade, on technology and innovation. I agreed with Prime Minister Modi to aim for a conclusion of the free trade agreement still this year. So for me, forging these partnerships is essential, because we have learned the very hard way that sourcing products we need from partners we trust is the best way to avoid overdependencies or to avoid vulnerabilities and blackmail. And this is, of course, the best way then to build strong economies. Now, all this work, prosperity, security, democracy, all this work begins at home. And therefore, let us shed a light on what we did at home. First, on prosperity. Since the start of the mandate, we have delivered 8 initiatives to make Europe more competitive, and 3 more are in preparation. We started with the competitiveness compass. As you know, this is the translation of the Draghi report into a Commission communication, basically showing the roadmap ahead of us, our North Star for a stronger, more prosperous Europe. And it works hand in hand with the Clean Industrial Deal, here supporting energy-intensive industries and clean tech, the joint roadmap for decarbonization and competitiveness. And the day we agreed the Clean Industrial Deal in College, I also discussed it with the European industry at the Antwerp Summit. Now, in parallel, we're zooming in on sectors that are key for Europe's industrial base and are undergoing the biggest transitions. So this is the reason why I started engaging directly with agriculture, the agricultural sector. We have now the vision for agriculture. I engaged directly with the automotive industry with a strategic dialogue for the automotive industry that resulted in the action plan. And we started the dialogue with the steel industry, and an action plan on steel will come soon. Others will follow. Other strategic dialogues will follow. In parallel, we are busy cutting red tape. You are aware of the 2 omnibuses that started. And last but certainly not least, this week I signed a new pact for European social dialogue, and we proposed the union of skills because the social market economy is at the heart of the prosperity of the European economy. On all these, the direction of travel was always clear. What has changed in these 100 days is the new sense of urgency, because something fundamental has shifted. Our European values, democracy, freedom, the rule of law, are under threat. We see that sovereignty, but also ironclad commitments are called into question. Everything has become transactional. So the pace of change has accelerated, and the action that is needed has to be bold and determined. Consequently, this week brought unanimous support for Rearm Europe. You're familiar with the 800 billion package for defence, and that is historic. This can be the foundation of a European defence union. We will drive the Rearm Europe plan forward with full force. The idea behind it is we must unleash the full potential in the face of concrete threats. And if we can team up with other like-minded countries, such as the UK or Norway or Canada, the potential is even greater. And it's important to state that economic strength and Europe's plan to rearm are 2 sides of the same coin. Europe's economic and innovative potential is an asset for its security, but vice versa, you see that Europe's defence efforts can give a massive boost to a more competitive single market in the midterm and in the long term. The upcoming huge investments in Europe's next generation of military equipment and security infrastructure can trigger a powerful tailwind for important industries. Just think of the fast-tracking of digitalization and modernization of the transport networks, or think of the AI applications, quantum computing, secure communication. Think of key technologies like satellite networks, autonomous vehicles, robotics. All of this is on one hand important for Europe's defence, but it is equally important for Europe's competitiveness. SMEs across our union, if you look at those who are in the defence supply chain, 2,500, will be at the heart of this transformation. Now, to be successful, we also need to speed up and involve more private investors. We will launch new omnibus packages to further simplify rules and cut red tape, including in the defence sector. And still this month, we will unveil the European Savings and Investment Union, because only an effective, a deep and liquid capital market can turn the savings into the much, much needed investments. So progress here is no longer a nice to have. It's absolutely a must. In today's world, maintaining Europe as an economic powerhouse is also a matter of collective security. Extraordinary times call for extraordinary measures, and this is also true for my Commission. To deal with the challenging way ahead, we need to switch into a preparedness mindset. And this is why in the next weeks, I will convene the first ever Security College. This will ensure that the college members receive regular updates on security developments, whether it's internal security or external security, but also energy, defense, research. Think of cyber, trade, foreign interference. Only if we have a very clear and in-depth understanding of the threats, also the threats we call hybrid threats, can we effectively contribute to collective security. Now, everything we have done in these first 100 days has been focused on our biggest challenges. And we will keep up the work. On Tuesday, that is day 100 of this college, we will adopt an ambitious legal proposal on returns. Returns is a key element of the Pact of Migration and Asylum. We will propose common rules for return with the new European return order and mutual recognition of return decisions by member states. So we want to put in place a truly European system for return by proposing a regulation with simpler and clearer rules, preventing absconding, and facilitating the return of third country nationals with no right to stay. Those who are forcibly returned will be issued with an entry ban, and we will be stricter where there are security risks. We will be assertive, but we will also make sure that we will act in full respect of our obligations under international law and fundamental rights. To conclude, the Commission is ready to tackle today's crisis. We need speed, we need scale, we need determination. We have a once-in-a-generation chance to build a stronger, a more prosperous, a more secure Europe. So let's seize the moment because it's Europe's moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President. And we can open the floor to questions. We'll start here in the middle, please, in the front. Yes, you.
Thanks a lot. Thomas Kutschka with Frankfurt Allgemeine Zeitung. Madam President, my question is on defense, specifically on the white paper, which is due in about 10 days now. So in a general sense, what do we expect of this paper now that the Commission has already launched a number of initiatives for the previous UCO? And with two specific points, please. The one is the last European Council has called upon the Commission to propose additional financing resources. And there's clearly a wish of many member states that this includes Eurobonds. So could you please update us on what your thinking is about this, given the changing circumstances? And the second issue is nuclear. I think the Commission has been tasked to explore the full range of options for European security in the white paper. So would this also, or could this also include the nuclear dimension? And do you see any role, a potential role, for the Commission in advancing this dialogue that French President Macron has launched? Thank you.
So let me start with the last part of your, I would say 3 parts of your question. Nuclear deterrence is and will always remain a purely national prerogative. So the Commission has no comment on that one. The second part of your question was about the white paper. Indeed, we issued now, or we proposed the 800 billion package, Rearm Europe. But this is one part that looks at giving the member states fiscal space and creating fiscal space also for joint procurement, which is so important. Of course, in addition, also the private sector. But a white paper is much, much more than that. It's first of all an analysis of the threat scenario that we are confronted with so that we know what's going on and what the state of play is. Then proposing, of course, actions or reactions to these threat scenarios in the analysis. And then there are many, many topics. For example, if you look at the future of the defense industry has to substantially change. There will be consolidation. There will be much more speed and scaling up, has to be much more speed and scaling up in the defense industry. It has to be structured differently to really meet the demands that are coming. Also, the important role of being complementary with NATO. I keep emphasizing, and I think it's very important, that we will not reinvent the wheel, but we will build on the very successful coordination with NATO when it comes to standards and norms, or when it comes to the analysis of where do we have the gaps. So there's a wide range of topics that have to be discussed, and this will be part of the white paper. Now, financing options. So whatever the financing options are, we will have to raise money. So also the new instrument that we are creating, the 150 billion, you have to raise money for that. The Commission is borrowing against the headroom and then on-lending the loans to the member states. The same is with the triggering of the national escape clause. Of course, the member states have to go to the capital markets and raise money for these defense expenditures. So however you then shape in the very end the handout of financial means, we will have to raise money on the capital markets. And of course, then is most important that this push in the defense industry, which I described in a few sentences in the introduction, will have, if we do it right, an enormous effect on our industry, because this is really going to the frontier of innovation and development and speeding up with scale the production that is so necessary for our defense posture.
And we move on. Yes, Dan, please.
Dan Michaels with the Wall Street Journal. About the omnibus and simplification and cutting red tape, the initial reaction of the business community was essentially nice start, but you've got a lot more work to do. I guess to use your words, you need to be bolder and more determined. Do you think, given the pushback that there is from other parts of society and other interests, it's possible to achieve what business is pushing for, especially when the United States, under President Trump, is deregulating, or in some cases just appears to be set to throw away a lot of regulations? Thank you.
It's about simplification. And on one thing we are very, very clear. We have our common goals cast in law, that is climate neutrality by 2050 and at least minus 55% by 2030. How we get there is flexible, pragmatic and adaptable, technology neutral. That's very important because it's a huge transformation. The global economy is undergoing. No one has done it before. So you have to be willing and able to adapt all the time without leaving the sight on the goal that we have agreed together. I think this is very important for that. For this also you need simplification and speed. And I'll give you an example from taxonomy. I think this shows why you can have both goals, stay true to the goal and be faster and simpler. Taxonomy, with the changes we introduced, 90% of the companies are out of the scope, so do not have to deliver on reporting on taxonomy. But what is affected is only 1% of what is actually it's a carbon border adjustment mechanism, 1% that is coming to the market. So 1% of carbon footprint is affected by that, 99% not. And these are points where you see that simplification can be done without letting the goal out of sight. So, yeah.
Yes, we proceed here on the right. Virginie.
Oui, bonjour, Virginie Malingue du Monde. J'ai deux questions. La première, à propos des États-Unis, vous continuez à en parler comme un allié. J'aimerais savoir ce qui, dans le comportement des États-Unis depuis 6 semaines, vous fait penser que c'est encore un allié. D'où ça sort. Seconde question, pour rebondir sur la question de Thomas, vous avez dit des temps extraordinaires appellent des réponses extraordinaires. On parlait là de défense. Vous avez annoncé que vous alliez convoquer un collège de la sécurité. Mais sur les questions de financement, là, encore une fois, je reviens là-dessus. Les États membres vous ont demandé d'explorer des pistes pour qu'il y ait plus de financement. Quelles sont les pistes que vous pensez pouvoir explorer au-delà de ce que vous avez d'ores et déjà annoncé pour les 150 milliards et l'espace budgétaire? Est-ce que c'est le mécanisme européen de stabilité, un emprunt commun, autre chose? Enfin bon, parce que vous nous avez parlé de l'union des marchés de capitaux, rebaptisée union de l'épargne, j'ai oublié, je ne sais plus quoi. C'est la même chose, mais côté public, où est-ce qu'on peut trouver de l'argent et comment? Merci.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge amount that we are offering now to member states or for joint procurement, 800 billion. So that's enormous. And therefore, I think we will focus now on delivering the legal proposals, which is under time pressure. We are under time pressure to do that. We want to do this before the next European Council. And this is where the focus is on. Of course, if there are interesting ideas, I'm absolutely willing to look into this. But the tasking of the European Council was very clear, that we deliver on the national escape clause and that we deliver on the proposal with the new instrument with 150 billion euros in loans for joint procurement. We are looking into the topic of cohesion funds, as you know, and to deliver on the private sector, the Savings and Investment Union, and a different lending pattern of the EIB. Cut, the other part of your question, the United States, they have been for more than 80 years our closest ally. And in the face of adversity, the US and Europe have always been stronger together. And yes, there are differences, but we might have different views on some topics, but if you look at the common interests that we have, they always outweigh our differences. So I think it's important that we work together. We will have our differences. We have to sort them out, but we will have to find common avenues.
Oui, Virginie, vas-y.
Oui, ma question sur les États-Unis, c'était pas une question de savoir si on avait intérêt à être alliés, parce que ça, vous l'avez déjà dit. C'était vraiment, depuis le 20 janvier, qu'est-ce qui vous fait croire dans le comportement de l'administration Trump que ce sont encore vos alliés, nos alliés? Voilà. Est-ce qu'il y a des éléments, des choses qui ont été faites, des choses qui ont été dites, qui vous font encore croire possible que les États-Unis soient les alliés de l'Union européenne, des Européens?
Okay, got your question. Of course, the United States are allies. This does not mean that the pattern that we had the last, at least 25 to 30 years, if not longer, that the pattern is still the right one, that the bulk of the defense responsibility lies with the United States and not with all the other allies. We have to do our homework. We have to fulfill our responsibilities. We have to take them on our shoulders. And therefore, the first step with the rearm package is so important, to make very sure that we need really to step up our own defense. Being allies does not mean that there is an imbalance in the responsibility or the burden that has been shared. I was present in 2014 as Defence Minister in Wales when the 2% were agreed. Well, we know today where the figures are, and we know that we will need more than 2%. The Secretary General of NATO speaks of north of 3%. And this is a call that goes to all of us in the alliance, or all those in the alliance. So the European Union really has to step up. The member states in the European Union have to step up. Some have already, have done their homework without any question, but others have not. And then when we're doing this, we should do it in a smart way. Therefore, this double approach, on one hand, as every member state is different, they need the national fiscal space to do what is necessary in their national posture. But on the other hand, we are fully aware that we have domains, and we have identified these 6 to 7 domains, where we need joint procurement, joint action, so that the member states can chip in contracts, multi-annual contracts, for huge topics like an advanced air defense shield, or the missiles, the drones, the ammunition. We all know these topics, where we have to step up together, and therefore this road is paved. There's a third element, that in parallel we have to make sure that Ukraine is in a position that it can keep on fighting till we have reached a just and lasting peace. And with the new instrument, the member states can chip in initiatives, for example, like the Danish initiative or the Czech initiative, but they can also procure military capability that then are given to Ukraine, for example. So my plaidoyer is, we are allies, but this means that all allies have to take their responsibilities.
Carol, please.
Carl de Beyer here. Yes, for the French daily Les Echos. I would like to know the consequences of the new, the latest events on your thinking about the next budget, because we expect a proposal in July already. So do you think we must totally rethink the budget as it is today? And do you sense, given the urgency that we witness now, do you sense a willingness from the member states to go far beyond the 1% of GDP that we have now?
Well, I think it's a bit premature to talk about the size of the budget, but of course we have to rethink the budget, because this budget has been forged or shaped 5 to 7 years ago, and the world was a completely different one. So with the eyes of today, we will have a proposal that will come mid-summer, so also time to mature for this proposal, and then we will discuss with member states. What I see is that member states fully understand the urgency that we have to step up in competitiveness, in security, and in protecting our democracy. This is absolutely clear, but this is, of course, no blank check to put in whatever we think should be in, but it's still a matter, of course, of negotiation. So without any question, it will be different, the budget, but we have still a lot of time to negotiate that.
Susanna, please.
Thank you. Here. Susana Freixas for SIC and Expresso Portugal. A kind of follow-up question, because on Thursday, President Costa said that there should be no taboos, and he was mentioning common borrowing for grants. Clearly, after 2 questions, you avoid the word grants or common borrowing for grants. So my question is very direct. Do you think that there is no need for common borrowing for grants? So this is my first question. And if I may, a follow-up question also regarding the relation with the US. Do you think that at some point during your mandate you will have to de-risk the relation with the US as you have done with China?
So for the second question, a clear no. It's a completely different relationship we have with the United States than we have with China. Therefore, a clear answer. And for the first, what the first question is concerned, where I put my emphasis on right now is, 3 days after we proposed the package to the European Council, that my task now is, in the next 2 weeks, to deliver a concrete legal proposal. Nothing is off the table. I'm open for whatever is necessary. Get me right. But to start a debate 3 days after we've done a proposal that was unanimously supported, with a lot of positive replies from everywhere, to come with new thoughts, I think is too early. As I said, nothing is off the table. I'm willing to explore whatever member states, and they've asked for other things too. We can discuss then other scenarios in the next European Council. This is the decision of member states and, of course, the president of the European Council. But my task now, 3 days after such a big step forward, I mean, it's unprecedented that in defense we are supposed to provide this enormous possibility to the European Union. I focus now on the legal proposal, which will be tricky enough.
Please.
Anselm Stern, Second German Television. Germany is going into debt. The EU is lifting the European debt brake. How much is the European Stability Act in danger?
Yeah. So this is a very clear, fine line that we have to walk precisely, indeed. And therefore, the national escape clause is being triggered in a very controlled manner, proportionate and time-limited, and with a strong focus on looking at the individual situation of member states. That's very important. Therefore, we chose the national escape clause. If I may say, in COVID, it was the general escape clause, and it was open to everything and for everybody. Here, it's very targeted and very controlled. It gives fiscal space on defense for a period of 4 years. This fiscal space is potentially generous, yes. Member states can rise to 1.5%. Increasing on GDP. That is an enormous sum that is there potentially. And therefore, if we do it in such a controlled manner while keeping the rest of our binding rules, don't forget that the Stability and Growth Pact is very strict on everything else, this can also be a much-needed boost and investment in the European economy and thus the European prosperity and our competitiveness. I put so much emphasis on it because if you look at the state of play today, 80% of the investments in defense, which are already billions, are going abroad, outside the European Union. 80%. This is good jobs, lots of research and development outside the European Union. Only 20% land here. We shape this new instrument also for joint procurement in Europe, because, of course, this has knock-on effects that are extremely valuable for our economy, for dual use. So we know it's not only military purposes. The classical example everybody knows is in military research, the World Wide Web and GPS have been developed, and a lot other things. Look at the usage of drones today in the civil sector. It's vast. It started in the military sector. So we have a huge potential in research and development with spillover effects in the civil economy, plus vice versa. We also know that the civil economy is contributing a lot with innovation and research to the military development. And therefore, if done carefully, controlled, properly, it can be a huge opportunity.
Angela, please.
Yes, Angela Mauro of Post Italy. Thanks for the opportunity. You've just said joint procurement for expenses in Europe. And my question is, as there is a big discussion, there is a discussion on the Buy European clause between France and Germany. What do you think of this? And if I can, another question on the name, Rearm Europe. Some say it's unpopular, like the Italian Prime Minister thinks it's unpopular. I think you don't repent the choice. Can you explain us why? Thanks.
So the name describes what is happening. I mean, if you look at the history of the development of defense investments and expenditure, I think we were around about 4% at the end of the Cold War. Then, rightly so, there was a reduction of defense investments. It was the time of the end of history, Fukuyama. So all these affect the peace dividend, yes. But then it went further than only a peace dividend and went into, because of tight budgets and financial crises and so on, into decreasing in underinvestment, at least 1 or 2 decades of underinvestment. And therefore, it is necessary to establish the posture again that is so important. The new instrument of 150 billion euros for joint procurement, we will call it SAFE, Security Action for Europe. So that's a core element. And yes, there was a first part in your question and I forgot it, I must admit.
By European.
Sorry, I started with the second part. It's never good to ask me 2 questions. I always forget the second one. So I think I just explained why I think over time it can't be that 80% of our investment, think of these 800 billion. If 80% go abroad, this is very good for other regions, but not good for the European Union. I'm aware of the fact that this is a gradual increase of buy European and that we have to think about what includes Europe. For example, we have strong ties to our British friends, or I remember very good connections to Norway, excellent in submarines, for example. So we have to think smartly how we do this, but that in general it has to deliver also on research development and good jobs. Here in Europe is for me very important. Why do I say gradually? Because the reason that at the moment being we're buying 80% outside of the European Union is that we needed, and we need urgently, the capability, and they were not here. So we also have to rethink the functioning of the European defence industrial base. There needs to be consolidation. There will need, on our side, we need reforms of the procurement directive, for example, that you can chip in existing contracts already, and many things like that that are hindering today defence companies to work seamlessly together and thus scale up and speed up the process. Perhaps a last comment on that one for me is exemplary the unbelievable speed and quality in Ukraine of the defence industry. There was almost nothing when the war started. And if you look today at the multitude of highly agile functioning startups in Ukraine producing drones, armored vehicles, etc., cheaper, faster and more intelligent than it happens here, we know where the task is. So the defence industry of the European Union is now going to Ukraine to understand what is the difference that they are showing here, and this is the way for us to act.
Jérôme Cartier de l'agence France Presse. Vous marquez les 100 premiers jours de votre second mandat. Donald Trump va bientôt marquer les 50 premiers jours de son second mandat aussi. Et depuis son retour, il a multiplié les attaques contre l'Europe, soit directement, soit par la voix de son vice-président. Vous avez évoqué aussi la nécessité d'un dialogue avec Washington, et on a le sentiment très net que la Maison-Blanche n'est pas pressée de rencontrer l'Union européenne. Est-ce que vous croyez aux vertus d'un face-à-face avec Donald Trump, et est-ce que vous travaillez en ce sens? Est-ce que vous souhaitez le rencontrer, en d'autres termes?
So I first met President Trump when he was in his last year of his first mandate, and this was the first year of my first mandate. So we've met already. We had a phone call. We spoke with others in the G7 VTC. So there are contacts, but I think also we will have a personal meeting when the time is right. And this is the state of play at the moment being.
Yes. Alexandra, please.
Thank you so much, Paula. Madam President, a follow-up on the defence. Of course, your proposal received unanimous political backing on Thursday. However, there is some discomfort in some member states about the possibility of these initiatives to open, you've mentioned yourself, to like-minded EU partners. I'm from Greece, Alexandra Voudouri from Greek Daily Kathimerini, so I think you know what I'm referring to. Are you planning in the white paper to consider these concerns And second question, if I may, 100 days, too many initiatives, too many plans. Would you have done anything different? Are you happy with what you delivered today? Thank you.
Yes, I'm happy with what I delivered today. No, seriously, if you would have asked me, I don't know, 6 months ago, I would have very strongly focused, of course, on the prosperity part, because there was a good reason why at the end of my last mandate I asked Mario Draghi to write this report, and it came out as an excellent report, in my view. It's an excellent report, so I knew focus on that one and be really strict on that one. But many, many other things, little did I know how much the world would change. Now, what like-minded countries is concerned, indeed, we have to find a good formulation and a good frame to work on that one. And you exactly described what we're doing right now. We're listening to all of the different interests and stakeholders to find a balanced approach. But I hope I explained understandably what the trade-offs are and how important it is here to find the right balance in the white paper then.
Good. There in the back.
It's Dorota from Polish Public TV, so Central Europe at least. I also have 2 questions. The first one, what makes you feel that this 800 billion euro is a historical, huge amount of money? It's similar to the fund that was made for the COVID pandemic, for the recovery Europe, whereas this fund was to buy the mask, to buy the vaccines, and in some countries like closer to Russia, so the Eastern Europe, the Nordic countries, there is already a feeling that it's simply not enough. Out of 800 billion euro, we only know this 150 billion that is sure, because it will be this joint procurement. We don't know if 650 billion euro will be used and how. And if the Russian soldiers come to Poland or another country, so we cannot just announce lockdown to the citizens. And the second question, the Commission was planning to announce to stop import and buy Russian energy sources. Actually, it was supposed to be announced in February, and it disappeared from the agenda of the European Commission. And there are some media reporting says that it may be connected to some plans of restart of Nord Stream 2 with American participation. Thank you.
Yeah. First question. Let me have a look. Yeah. So first of all, Next Generation EU came towards the end of the COVID pandemic. And it was meant, of course, not only for the short term, but as you recall, we had a sharp decline in economic activity because of the lockdowns in COVID, and huge problems of the economy to restart again. And therefore, Next Generation EU was the much-needed investment push to give an incentive again to the economy to open. And then you see we had a sharp decline and a sharp increase again of economic activity. What we wanted to prevent with this 850 billion Next Generation EU was that you have a sharp decline and then very slow recovery following after. And for that, this massive investment boost was there. And it helped a lot. It helped a lot. I say that this 800 billion for defense is so historic because investing in the economy is a known pattern of the single market, of course, for the European Union. Investing specifically in the defense industrial base is very new at that scale for the European Union. It's a discussion that was always very strong in NATO, but now it's a discussion that arrived also, rightly so, in the European Union, because the European Union has to care for its own military posture and has to be able, as I've described, to face the threats that we are seeing. So this has never happened before with that intensive and this focus, and it is the right move, I think. Your second question was on Russian gas, correctly. So it's worth to look at the political guidelines where I commit very clearly to phasing out the Russian gas, and I stay, of course, committed to that one. This is an absolute must. We've been successful, but we always see, of course, that there are loopholes where we have to be careful and that we have to work on. And the fact that we excluded or tried to get rid of the over-dependency on Russian gas caused also enormous trouble energy-wise, but I think it's also a proof that when asked to act in a joint manner, what we did, you can get rid of this over-dependency and develop a secure and affordable energy market. One of the points where it's always worth to look in, Repower EU is still working, and the purpose was and is to get rid of our dependency, and the affordable energy action plan that we have just issued, I think, last week, is also a very good roadmap to see how we're going to want to move forward on that topic.
Jennifer, please.
Thank you. Jennifer Rankin from The Guardian. It's over here. First of all, a follow-up. What would Norway and the UK have to do to be included in any Buy-European provisions? Would they, for example, have to agree to stop buying US-made defence equipment? Could you sketch out your thinking on how to include non-EU countries in Buy-European? And secondly, I really wanted to ask about Ukraine, because at the last European Council there were a lot of discussions about the medium term and the long term. But can you give us a sense of when you expect agreement on the Kaja Kallas initiative, on what steps the EU will be taking to support Ukraine to provide military aid this year, given how critical the situation is and the gap that has opened up with the very big gap from the loss of US aid? Thank you.
So, the non-European Union countries, the first part of your question, if you look at the pattern of the defense industry, you see that there are already very strong ties. So companies are already working cross-border. We do not have to reinvent the wheel. We have to think about a smart mechanism, how we can use this cooperation that is already established and at a high level of quality. I wish for more speed, but the level of quality is very high. Ukraine, we have made sure that the financing gap for the economic survival of Ukraine is closed this in 2025, focusing on this year. And indeed, I mean, if you look at what the European Union delivered overall, it's 140 billion euros, and this includes the economic survival or stability of Ukraine in the year 2025. If you look at the military supply, 52 billion euros have been worth military equipment have been supplied to Ukraine, actually on par with the United States. Here we will have to step up without any question. This initiative, Rearm Europe, helps a lot because it gives in two ways at least, and the third one is the possibility of private investment also, possibilities to be faster and more targeted in supporting Ukraine.
Good, and we cannot forget our colleagues online, so we turn to Momchil. One question from online.
Yes, hello.
We come to you. We come to you, Momchil.
Good afternoon. President, I have two questions. First question, President, last year during a pre-election debate, you said that parties like Revival in Bulgaria and others in other European countries want to trample our values and destroy our Europe. But we at the EPP...
Momchil, I'm sorry, we cannot see you, Momchil, and you know the rules, right?
Okay.
We need to be able to see you.
Do you see me now?
No.
Oh.
Yes. Okay, I'm sorry, Momchil. We'll have to proceed here in the room. So, Mark, please.
For once, I'm happy IT doesn't work always so well. Sorry, Mark Papercorn. I have one question only for you. It's about the Security College. When is the Security College going to start? How many commissioners and who will be part of it? How often will they meet? And what is their task? Are they preparing conclusions? Because then you get a kind of a division between A and B commissioners, and you know how sensitive this is. Thanks.
So the Security College will include all the commissioners, because you've just given one very good explanation for it. But the second is, if I may say so, that almost every topic could be involved. If we think back 4 years, never would I have been able to foresee how topics can be instrumentalized to drive a hybrid attack against us. Let's start with Russian gas. 4 years ago, we saw that Gazprom is not filling the gas storages as it should, but we did not draw the right conclusions. That was before the war started. So we saw it, we were worried, but little did we know, or no idea did we have, that this is the beginning of a hybrid attack on European energy security in order to force us not to support Ukraine. So instrumentalizing the overdependency. And then, of course, the storages were not filled appropriately, and Putin cut us off the Russian gas. The same was 4 years ago, a bit more, or 3.5 years ago, before the war, when all of a sudden migrants, mostly from Iraq, were at the Polish border. And Putin knew very well at that time this was our soft spot, and used migrants to drive a hybrid attack. We were used already to massive cyber attacks and all these topics. But by that, I want to say this is the Commissioner for Energy and is the Commissioner for Migration, for example. Without all this knowledge about hybrid attacks, we would never have thought in this wider sense. And therefore, the mindset of preparedness, as we have it displayed in the Minister report, that you have to be wider in analyzing the threats, is an important conditio sine qua non for the whole college, for the Security College. Security College convene in due time. I cannot tell you the exact date, I'm sorry. How often depends a lot on the urgency, of course. So it will be convened more often now than it would have been the case 4 years ago, for example. Important is that we get regular briefings from the relevant security services to be ahead of the curve and to remain ahead of the curve. So knowledge is important. In-depth knowledge of the security services is important, the analysis of the situation, the understanding what is coming, and of course then the political steer on different fronts where we have to deliver. I think it's important because I realize also in the discussions that we normally have in the college, we are very focused on the files that we deliver during that day. That's good. But this specific focus on what is the security landscape, what does the security landscape look like, where do I have to be attentive, what do I have to prepare potentially for something that is coming to be then able to deliver when it's necessary.
Henry, please.
Thank you so much. Henry Foy, Financial Times. Two questions. The first one's very simple, yes or no. Do you think that member states who take a slice of the 150 billion could, if they wanted to, spend it on an F-35 US fighter jet? It's a yes or no question. And secondly, the Ukrainians will sit down with the Americans this week for negotiations over a peace deal. That's something you and other member states have been demanding, is that they're involved. Do you feel like Kyiv has an exact idea of what Europe can supply in any peace agreement ahead of these talks in Saudi Arabia, or do we need to talk more about that?
So the contact to President Zelensky and the staff is very, very close. And it's built on trust that has grown over the last 3 years. We've basically gone through thick and thin, so we know that we are reliable for each other in crises or extraordinary situations, and that we can, most of the time, find solutions. Not always, but most of the times we find solutions while working very, very closely together. And of course, the talks that hopefully lead to a just and lasting peace, the talks around security guarantees, for example, are talks where we often also explore what is possible, what is in the first line. For example, the strongest security guarantee, of course, would be NATO membership. That is at the moment not possible. Then the second element, the most important, is a well-equipped, functioning Ukrainian army, armed forces. And then you can go into detail. So there's a lot of very fruitful discussion that we have. And, how do I say it in English, this is a common learning process also. Because, again, these are uncharted waters. And together we have to find the best solution. So member states nationally, of course, can decide what they want to do with their national military posture. Important is, and this is also, of course, the NATO military posture that is embedded in the norms and standards that are agreed together. This is important as a security matter. The joint procurement will be different. So there you can chip in or develop the possibility for joint contracts. Important here is 2 or 3 or more, 5, 6, 7 member states agree on a joint procurement domain. I think very important is what was not possible so far. You can come later to the contract without doing the whole process again. And these contracts can be multi-annual, for example, to give you an example for the features that we are discussing and putting on paper right now. Multi-annual also was not possible right now, a constant complaint of the defense industry. And of course, there are more possibilities for the defense industry really to deliver fast and effective.
David, please.
Thank you very much. David Carretta, Radio Radicale, Italian Radio. You've said several times that the US are still ally. But after the decision that the Trump administration took on Ukraine, suspending military aid, suspending sharing of intelligence even for air defense, yearly detection of mass missiles, the fact that the Vice President has campaigned and is campaigning for anti-democratic forces in Europe, in the EU, would you say that the Trump administration is still an ally, or it's time to confront them in a different way? Thank you very much.
So my position is clear. The United States are an ally in the transatlantic alliance. We have our discussion points without any question. And who am I to speak about? I just realized about the transatlantic alliance. From the viewpoint of the European Union, I think it's a very strong wake-up call and Europe's moment now really to step up in defense and giving ourselves the posture that we need.
Yeah. Okay, good. So we're coming to an end. The final 2 questions. Here, please. Yes, you.
My name is Yulia Sarivan. I'm from Republic of Moldova, representing Journal TV. So just before the special summit, President Macron said that Russia's next target is definitely Moldova and Romania, especially in terms of disinformation and cyber attacks. So in the meantime, the European Union is strengthening its defense through Rearm Europe. What does this plan mean for non-EU countries as Moldova is, and can we expect even more support from the European Union? Thank you.
So Moldova, for sure, as a candidate country, can expect a lot of support from the European Union, and I think we are on a very good path. With the growth plan, for example, we're working intensively on giving Moldova more access to the European single market in certain sectors. This comes with investment in Moldova's economy. So Moldova can expect that we stand by Moldova firmly and determined, and of course with the full support that we have given so far, and this will always also be the case in the future.
Good. And there, please. Yes, you. Sorry, don't remember your name.
James Cantor from the Media EU Scream. President, it's a bit of a follow-up on Dorota's question. Europe still buys tens of billions in Russian hydrocarbons. And of course, we know those hydrocarbons, those revenues fuel the Russian war machine. At the same time, and this is a little bit the 100 days question, you have presided over quite a dramatic rollback of the Green Deal. And the Green Deal is, of course, supposed to hasten a whole of society move away from carbon and fossil fuels. So how do you respond to those who say there's a bit of an incoherence here when it comes to policies on climate, but also on security? Thanks.
So the hydrocarbons from Russia. Our dependency on Russia, I try to get off the top of my head all the figures. Dependency on Russian gas was 45% at the beginning of the war. It was reduced by 75%, which is quite a big step. The dependency on coal was 50%, it's zero. And I think oil also was around 50%. Now, the figure I know for sure, it's 3%. So by that, you see a huge effort to get rid of our dependency. If I look at the overall situation of Russia, it's a mixed picture. The sanctions are biting and having a very detrimental effect on the Russian economy. You see that they have skyrocketing interest rates and inflation is soaring. But what is still a source of income, not from the European Union, is the oil revenues. So we see that very clearly. A field where improvement globally should happen, or we could have a closer look at it globally. Now, that's a hydrocarbon with Russia. What the European Green Deal is concerned, very clear in the Draghi report. There are 3 elements where he's very clear on. The first is innovation. But the second, and therefore I'm mentioning it, the big pillar with Draghi is decarbonization and competitiveness. And basically my whole program is built on decarbonization and competitiveness because I'm deeply convinced that with innovation and decarbonization you can be very competitive. That's where I'm completely convinced about. If you look at the competitiveness compass, you see it as a red thread. If you look at the clean industrial deal, it looks at clean tech. And clean tech, of course, is not only, but also, for example, the whole renewable element. Not only, there's much more than that. So it's one of the big cornerstones or pillars of this mandate. I'm convinced that the future markets will be clean tech. And, I mean, we've discussed often, for example, why is China investing so massively in electric vehicles? Because they know that the future of mobility will be autonomous, electric and software-driven. Why are the Gulf countries investing so heavily in green hydrogen? They tell me they sit on oil and gas and dominate today the energy sector. They also want to dominate the energy sector of tomorrow. This is why they are investing in green hydrogen, because they know these are going to be the markets of tomorrow. So this is not only a question, it's also a question of fighting climate change, but it's also a question that I'm deeply convinced that the economy will move into the clean direction, and we are leader in many technologies, but we have to stay leaders in many clean technologies, and for that the whole competitiveness compass is composed the way it is composed.
Good. And with this we conclude our press conference. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you to the interpreters, and a big thank you to President von der Leyen for her presence here today. Wish you a good afternoon, and in the meantime the documents, the statement of President von der Leyen is already available for your use. Wish you a nice afternoon.
Bye.